Hi, and welcome to Luna and Seeba, a Wiccan journey. This is our first podcast together as cousins. I am Seeba, and this is my fifth podcast and Luna's first podcast. Um, I'm not a pro just because this is my fifth podcast. I just podcast every day of the week. And I range from many different subjects such as mental health, true crime, and poetry. Now I'm doing Wiccan followings. We're going to learn about Wicca. And Luna and I also have created a secondary podcast. It's not up and running yet, but soon it will be.
Work in
And that,
progress.
yeah, we're working on it. That one is Luna and Seeba. Wait, no, it's Pushing the Outer Limits with Luna and Seeba. We'll give you more information on that later. For right now, I'm going to pass the mic to Luna and let her speak to you.
Hi, I'm Luna. We're just this is basically a um, learning together on Wicca podcast. Um, I've always been interested in it. I know Seba has been for a while too. So
Years.
now we're finally joining forces and actually learning about it together.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
We're noobs. We're
Yeah,
new at
I'm
this.
new to this. This is scary as fuck to me. So
I've been dabbling in this since I was maybe 13, but I didn't get serious into this until maybe 3 or 4 years ago. But I'm still new to it because now I'm taking it serious. So that's why it's our journey because we're both taking it serious now.
yeah, I've always known that traditional religions weren't for me, but something always drew me to Wicca,
Mm-hmm.
like the whole atmosphere around it. So I thought might as well actually try and
Try
see how far I can go.
You know what drew me to Wicca, which is really weird? It the hippies. Because Wicca, when I think of Wicca, I think of like tree hugging. Like Wicca is such a peaceful religion. It's all about love and harming no one and loving yourself and uplifting. And it's a really beautiful religion. So when I think about that, I think about the hippies. And I think about how hippies didn't want to hurt anyone. If anything, it's more of a togetherness. So that's what kind of drew me to Wicca was the fact that it was a togetherness religion. So today, guys, what we are going to do is give you some history on Wicca so you will understand, as we've learned, the truth about how Wicca began and why it is as famous as it is today, and some interesting terms and facts. You know, Luna's going to start us off with her portion of the history.
So I'll be talking about a woman named Dorothy Clutterbuck, I believe. She
Yeah.
also was known as Old Dorothy. She has a very fascinating potential background. She lived from 1880 to 1951. She was introduced to Wicca, witchcraft, all of it, in 1939. And she uh, was introduced, can't speak, she was introduced by a man named Gerald B. Gardner. And after that, things got a little weird. Um, Not much is known about her. When she was alive, she was very mysterious. A lot of people didn't expect her to be this way. If like she really was, there's lots of speculation about her. I would say that.
She reminds me of me. No one expects me to be like how I am.
Yeah, me too. No one expects me to be into this stuff.
Yeah.
For her, um, for most of her Wiccan life, she didn't really express it much because most of the time in most of that era, it was very unheard of to be anything but a hardcore Christian kind of
Yeah.
person, and a lot of people didn't take too kindly to witchcraft.
Of course not.
Up until Gerald Gardner. He was the one who blew it. But Miss Old Dorothy, though, had some very creepy history. There was many rumors that she was made up by Gardner. And it wasn't until 30 years after she had passed that another witch in the community found out that she really was a real person. But a lot of stuff, there's a lot of questions. A lot of questions such as not really knowing if she really was a witch or if she was just kind of dabbling in it but not really serious.
Yeah.
Or if she wasn't into it at all, she was just assumed to be a witch because of how mysterious she was. There was rumors that there wasn't rumors. It was true that her husband had cheated on his poor mentally ill wife with Miss Dorothy. It was something. But he ended up dying not long later from a car accident. So
I'm not laughing, but I'm laughing.
Karma, maybe?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, maybe something like that. Yeah, it's gotta be karma.
Right.
But because Wicca has that rule of 3. And then there's that what's put out comes back threefold. So him cheating on his wife could have resulted in his death. That's the threefold. It's worse than what he actually did.
Right.
Possibly. Speculate on that.
Right. And with her being a mystery in itself, when a woman by the name of I can't find her name right now, but basically a fellow witch in the community went to what was known as one of her last places, I guess where she was buried, I'm assuming. To basically talk to her spirit and find out if she really basically wanted some answers, but also didn't want to dig into this woman's history and not have approval.
Yeah.
So she basically asked her for approval, and there's claims that Gardner's spirit and Miss Dorothy's spirit basically gave permission to dig deeper into the history of Dorothy.
But how? Dun dun dun.
The how is very interesting. The how is at the, I'm assuming, final resting place. Her and the witch that was doing the research and a couple of others decided to like talk to her at this place. Well, they apparently somehow there was a lantern involved. It was further down, like some ways away from them. Well, it shattered. The glass just broke and went everywhere, and they took that as a and also before I get ahead of myself, they also, with that lantern breaking, they also heard the voice of the spirit of Gardner.
Supposedly?
Supposed, that's what
Okay.
she's claiming happened. But with those two experiences, they summed up that was their spirits giving them permission to dig deeper into the history of these people, Miss Dorothy specifically. And once she did finally dig a little deeper into the history, a lot was figured out that didn't really answer any more questions. They brought more questions, which is the interesting part. So they ended up finding her her journals and diaries. Most of what she wrote about was a lot of poems, a lot of just random stuff, and a lot of it didn't really sit well of someone who would have been a witch, if that makes sense. Yeah. It was very questionable. A lot of what she had written didn't sound like a witch. It sounded more like a conservative Christian. But it brought a lot of questions. My brain can't work right now. And also, there is another theory that she was made up to, well, not made up to cover somebody, but used as the face to cover for somebody else. Because Mr. Gardner had a supposed other priestess that wanted to stay anonymous, basically. Didn't want to be out there. Because at that time it wasn't very good if they were. So there's theories that Miss Dorothy was used as a cover-up for that actual person. Which is quite interesting, I would say.
That is.
But yeah, that's the most interesting things I've found on Dorothy. A lot of it is speculation. There's not much fact on who she was, what she did, who she was before 1939. There's only very little fact. Like there's fact of what date she was born at and where, but there's no
Nothing
or
really,
further than that.
nothing really tangible.
Yeah, it's very speculated on who this woman really was. There might be a little bit more now, but when originally there was like close to nothing, and it took 30 years before anybody got anything serious, which is kind of crazy. If like someone who is known so heavily in this community is so mysterious and almost non-existent, it raises a lot of questions.
It leads me to believe that she really was into the craft, and she did a damn good job hiding
Yeah, because that's a lot of what a lot of them had to do was to hide
and
because it was
pretend.
not safe to be
Yeah,
openly in this community. Which honestly, in some parts of today, it may not
it's
even
still
be
not.
safe either.
Yeah, that's why I'm very careful on who I talk to and about what degree I get into, because people are so close minded and only about themselves and their own religion. So I'm very, very careful about who I divulge my beliefs in to. You know.
Right.
Do you have anything else to add?
Um, as far as Miss Dorothy goes, I think she's covered.
Okay, I'm going to speak on Gerald Gardner. His full name is Gerald or Gerald, however you want. I'm pretty sure he went by Gerald back in the day. Um, Brosu or Brosal or Broso. Brosseau. That's more like a bow. Broso Gardner. He was born June 13th, 1884, and died on February 12th, 1964. He was known by the craft name Sire, and he was an English Wiccan as well as an author and an amateur anthropologist and archaeologist. He was most famous for bringing the contemporary pagan religion of Wicca to public attention. He also wrote some of its definitive religious texts, and he is famous for founding the tradition of gardenering. Gardenering. Ugh, it is late at night.
Yes, it is.
Gardnerian Wicca. In 1911, he went to Malaya, where he worked as a civil servant independently, developing an interest in the native people, and he began writing papers and a book about their magical practices. After his retirement in 1936, he traveled to Cyprus and he wrote a novel called A Goddess Arrives. Then he returned to England. He settled down near New Forest, where he joined an occult group, and that group was called the Rosicrucian Order Crotona Fellowship. And there he encountered the New Forest Coven, and then he became initiated into that coven in 1939. Um, he believed that the coven would was to the survival of the pre-Christian witch cult discussed in books written by Margaret Murray. So what he did is he decided to revive the faith. So in reviving the faith, he supplemented the coven's ritual ideas and borrowed them from Freemasonry, ceremonial magic, and the writings of Aleister Crowley. And then from mixing all of those different beliefs together, that's how he came up with the Gardnerian tradition of Wicca. If I can get his name out today, it would be great if I could just do that. But no. Founding the Wiccan group known as the Bricketwood Coven, he introduced a string of high priestesses into the religion, including Doreen Valent, uh, Valente, Louis Bourne, Patricia Crawford, and Eleanor Bone, through which the Garnerian community spread through Britain and subsequently into Australia and the United States in the late 1950s and early 1960s. And at this time, he became involved with Cecil Williamson. He also became a director of the Museum of Magic and Witchcraft on the Isle of Man, and that ran up until after he died. Garner is internationally recognized as the father of Wicca among the pagan and occult communities. He is very into a lot of occult things. He was a learner of all. He reminds me a lot of me. There was nothing that he pretty much turned down. So the Rosicrucian Order, which began in 1938 and ended in 1939, was mainly like a Freemason order. Garner decided to attend one of the plays performed by the group in August of 1939. His wife was not a fan. She thought it sucked, but he didn't. So he was like, you know what? Even though you think this sucks, I'm going to hang around. So, boom, she leaves. She doesn't hang out, go around him. He decides that he is going to join a group that's in charge of running the theater. And that was the Rosicrucian Order Crotona Fellowship. So he began to attend those meetings held at their local ashram. This was founded in 1920 by George Alexander Sullivan. So the fellowship had been based upon a blended of the Rosicrucian Theos- Theosophy and Freemasonry. So a lot went into this. And this is like where he really developed his occult liking and love and learn love for the learning. As time went by, he became crucial or critical of many of their practices. In 1939, he actually left and joined the Folklore Society, and his first contribution was to its journal, and it appeared in June 1939. That issue he described a botch, a box of witchcraft relics that he believed belonged to the 17th century witchfinder general Matthew Hopkins. So then in 1946, he would go on to become the member of the society's governing council. So a lot of the people that were in the council were weary of his ways and thought that something was off about him, and they didn't believe that he had the academic credentials to be of high society as he was. But he was from a very wealthy yet middle class family at the same time. So he very well could have had what he said he had. Then after that, he joined the Historical Association, and he was elected the co-president of the Bournemouth and Christchurch branch in June 1944. And then he became a vocal supporter for the construction of the local museum for the Christchurch borough. Gardner was into a lot. He never slowed down. He was very, very deep into the occult, which is probably why a lot of people thought when you were researching on Dorothy, it's probably why a lot of people thought that she was made up because he was so heavy into all of this that it really does seem like it was all him. Um, According to his account, he said that one night late in September 1939, he was taken to a large house owned by old Dorothy Clutterbuck, and she was a wealthy local woman. There, he was made to strip naked and he was taken through an initiation ceremony. Halfway through the ceremony, he heard the word Wicca, which meant male, and Wiccae, which meant female, and he recognized it as the Old English word for witch. Of course, he was already acquainted with Margaret Murray's theory of the witch cult. So, in his own words, I then knew then that which I had thought burnt out hundreds of years ago still survived. So basically, he said, I thought that all the covens were gone. I thought witchcraft had ended, but yet here it is right in front of me, and I'm being initiated into it. So, this group, as he said, was named the New Forest Coven, and he believed them to be one of the few surviving covens of the ancient pre Christian witch cult religion. So, based on that, he got into sources like occult magic and mainly the theories of Margaret Murray. He was into a lot of cults and a lot of different covens. He then went on um, to be part of the brick or to form the briquette wood and the origins of the Garnerism. And this was from 1945 to 1950, so 5 years of this. So throughout his time in New Forest, he regularly traveled to London, and he kept a house in Buckingham Palace mansions until mid 1939. And he regularly visited a nudist club. So then he moved to 47 Ridgemount Gardens, Bloomsbury in late 1944, early 1945. He continued to have an interest in nudism. So in 1945, he bought a plot of land and he formed a nudist colony. And that was in the Bricket Wood in Hertfordshire. And then they renamed that to 5 acres. So because of that, he became one of the major shareholders of the club. And then he had the most significant power over any of the decisions made, and that's even the recruitment. And then he took an interest in Druidry, and then he joined the ancient Druid order. And he attended the annual midsummer ritual in Stonehenge. He also joined Folklore Society, being elected their council in 1946, the same year that he gave a talk on the art of magic and talismans. Like, he was deep.
Wow.
uh,
He also seems like he was very busy.
Very busy. Like, he never slowed down. And he was quick to kick his wife out. Okay, you don't like this? Bye, girl. I like this. He was so busy. Okay, so it doesn't end there. On May Day in 1947, his friend Arnold Crowther introduced him to Aleister Crowley, and there they did ceremonial magic. And then they founded, or Aleister Crowley had founded the religion of Thelema in 1904. And shortly before his death, he promoted Gardner. And then he issued a charter decreeing that Gardner could admit people into its group. The charter itself was written in Gardner's handwriting, but only Crowley signed it. So Gardner drew up the plan and it was approved by Crowley before he died. From November 1947 to March 1948, Gardner and his wife toured the United States. They visited their relatives in Memphis, and they also visited relatives in New Orleans. And that's where Gardner hoped to learn about voodoo. Gardner also hoped that he could spread Wicca throughout the US and describes its practices in a fictional form as high magic's aid. Yeah, girl. Then in 1952, he began to correspond with a young woman named Doreen Valente. She eventually requested initiation into the craft. And though Gardner was hesitant at first, he agreed that they could meet during the winter at the home of Edith Woodford Grimes. Valente got on well with both of them, so that was fine. She did not have any objections to the ritual or to the nudity. Yeah, so she soon became high
Alrighty.
priestess of the coven. She went through all that and became the high priestess and helped Gardner revise his own book of shadows. So as we can see, Gardner's theories are drawn from numerous sources, including Freemasonry, magical orders such as the Golden Dawn and fellow occultists, including Aleister Crowley. He also formulated the Wicca calendar of 8 festivals, bringing together existing festivals from different traditions. So that is your history on
Wow.
Gerald Gardner, the man that never slept.
Wow.
He was
He seems like a very interesting person at the party.
yes. My question to you, Alexa, stop. My question to
Alexa's always
you,
butting in.
she is. So Luna,
She wanted a
would
piece of this
you
conversation.
would you participate in nude magic or sex magic?
I don't know about that one, Chief. That one,
You're not that deep in there yet.
I ain't there. I don't know if I'll get there because that's a little much for me. But
But it's something to think about. I honestly did until I read that. I honestly did not know that they would practice magic in the nude. I didn't know that that was a
I
thing.
didn't know that part either. I knew there was like magical properties in there. I just didn't know
Yeah,
that was how it was happening.
right. I didn't know that at all. So that's one thing that's new. And my light is on. My candle go bye bye. No, you're fine. My son is down here, guys. That's what I'm talking to in the background. Um, I'm a babe. So, oh, you had some stuff that you wanted to talk to the people about before we got into terms and stuff like that.
At this point, I don't remember what it was. It'll come to me eventually.
I remember you said I had something to
I don't
say.
remember.
Um, when my son stops making noise back there, I can go through some terms. By the way, this is a really good book to have. It's a really good book. It breaks down a lot of things. If you don't have this book, everybody should at least have this book. This book is everything. I have another book somewhere that it's not down here. There's actually 2 more books. It's like a beginner's guide and then um, how to make your own book of shadows. But this is also a really good book to have as well to keep on hand. So you can get a lot of true information. Um, I do want to let you know that Wicca is not at all what you see on TV. It's not the charmed ones. It's not
Right.
any of that. It's totally different. Um, I just wanted to go over a few terms that people tend to get confused.
And with what she just said about it's not what you have always been told it is, the thing that a lot of people confuse with Wicca is Satanism.
Yeah.
They're two totally different things. They have a lot of the same ideas, but they're not evil. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And to elaborate on that, Satanism isn't really like the worship of Satan,
Right. It's more of like the worshiping of yourself and treating yourself as
which is
basically a god,
which is
which
true because we
most
all are gods and goddesses.
right, and which is
We
a lot,
yeah.
which is when a lot of conservative Christians believe you're worshiping the devil because,
Yeah.
according to their texts, the devil was basically a person who worshipped himself.
So the thing that pisses me off about Christianity but makes me love Wicca is the fact that there is a reed and REDE and the reed basically says harm to none. So when we perform magic or when we do anything, we always make sure that it doesn't harm anyone, including ourselves. But in Christian texts, people are being stoned to death. Firstborn children are being sacrificed and killed. You know, there's
Right.
animal sacrifices. There's a lot of blood and gore in the Bible. The Bible is one of the most horrific books out there.
Right.
But Wicca is nothing like that. Wicca is all about love and unity and the helping and harming no one. You know, so there's a lot of misconceptions, and I really think people should take the time to really get to know exactly what Wicca is before they prejudge it.
Right. And a lot of misconceptions. Can't speak. A lot of misconceptions are not even from people who were actually a part of it. It's mostly from most, if not all, from people who specifically very conservative Christians that aren't very open minded to other things other than what they've been taught their whole lives or whatever the case may be. It it's just very a lot of things aren't at all what you're being taught if you were a part of a normal conservative Christian church. What you would have been taught is not at all how the dark side is what a lot of
Agree.
mm,
I think that you definitely need to take matters into your own hands and go to your local occult shop and really get your hands on some good books. Really get, don't get all your information from the internet because it's so heavily diluted.
yeah.
You know, definitely scan libraries have some really good books. You're gonna have to dig deep for them because they're not as out there as everything else. Anything that's good for you is hidden.
Right.
So you're gonna have to dig deep. So from this book, she has so ever lovingly left a glossary of terms. And I wanted to really just break down. Like a lot of people have asked me what a book of shadows is. A lot of people don't know what it is, but they've heard of it from Charmed and other like witchy type shows. And they see that it's like a spell book. Well, in a sense, a book of shadow is a grimoire that you yourself write. You write down your witchy knowledge. It could be spells, it could be herbology, it could be whatever. Any kind of recipes, anything. It could have been something that you learned about astrology. It could be whatever knowledge that you want to remember. Basically, a journal. And this is yours that you will go back to do your magic from, that you created your own spell from. but more importantly, it's what you'll pass down to in your generations to come. So that's what a book of shadows is what you make it. So you can't live off of a different family's book of shadows. You can't go to a store and buy somebody's book of shadows and live off of there. Now you can adapt from someone else's book of shadows, but a book of shadows is personal to each witch themselves and their family that will come after them. So I really wanted to break that down and get that misconception out of the way. And I also wanted to break down to you what coming out of the broom closet means. Because I've never heard of that. And I know that a lot of people have never heard of that. And simply put, that means you're living out and openly as a witch. Simply put, you can sit on the bottom stair. So, is there anything that you have questions about that you wanted me to break down for you?
Um, yes, but also I don't remember the exact terms for them.
Well, do your best.
Trying to think. What is it? My nail popped off. um,
Mine too.
this time it was my middle finger. Um, I honestly have nowhere to start with terms because a lot of them I was never shown or told, and
So
a lot of
you're
terms that are used in shows are like
wrong.
not really sure if they're real
Yeah.
terms or if they're
So you
things
feel
from the
like
TV
wet behind
show.
the ears in this sense.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Because guess what? We will have a ton more episodes, and in each episode, we'll learn more and more. So soon, whatever it is that you're searching will be answered. It definitely will be. I cannot believe we made it this far. We've been on here for 40 something minutes.
Yeah,
It
it's been a
doesn't,
lot of me not knowing what to talk about too. So
but it's okay. It's
it's
okay.
okay.
The
I'm getting used to this whole
line.
podcasting life.
Yeah.
So it's gonna take me a minute to get used to talking to not myself.
It's okay. The good thing is you have me because on my one podcast I do twice a week, it's just me. So it's hard to just come up with something while you're looking at yourself. So you have a co-host. So for
True.
our Anchor listeners, our Twitch listeners, YouTube listeners, and our Facebook listeners, we will be doing this every Wednesday. The time is not set in stone. You just have
Times may
to,
vary.
yes, you just have to follow us and pay attention to that notification because time really just depends on when we can sit down because we're
Right.
both in college and I have children.
Yep.
So, so it just really,
And
really
with our
depends.
yeah, oh my bad. And with our second upcoming podcast, that one will be more of a lighthearted,
I'm not gonna
or
say lighthearted.
I mean, I wouldn't say lighthearted. I would say
Yeah,
more
I would.
like
It's
I
it's
would say
gonna
probably
be
more scary, more
paranormal
things
ghost
that keep you
stories.
awake at night type of stuff.
The vibe, the
It's
vibe.
very a lot of it's very spooky. If you're into aliens, conspiracy theories, paranormal stories,
True paranormal
talks
story.
of unexplained disappearances,
Yeah,
situations.
and a lot of our thoughts on these things, and that one will be on Tuesdays. But when we start that, TBA.
Yeah, we're still trying to get everything
Let's get this one going a little bit first before
right.
we figure that out. But like I said, I have 5 podcasts going. I'm podcasting every single day of the week except Saturday. Saturday is my sacred day. Don't you mess with my sleeping in late on Saturday. Saturday is the only day I get to rest. So, you know what they say, he's
Right.
sleeping with the dead. I'm, I'm going to be Gerald Gardner. But, guys, I feel
Yeah.
like we've reached our limit. We've been at 45 minutes. So, if you're just now joining, please, once we end this, go back to the beginning because we have a lot of great, interesting historical facts.
Yep.
Next, we shall talk about like deities and other interesting gods and goddesses and
I do have
Wiccan
an episode coming of mysterious. Basically, it kind of ties in with our next podcast.
it's gonna be so fun.
But basically, I have a list of a lot of unexplainable. I guess you would call it hate crimes that are considered to be because of somebody was of a Wiccan or of a witchcraft religion.
Yeah,
So it's going to be very interesting, and a lot of
I
it
can.
is very weird. Also, I have one coming on urban legends slash myths slash
Ooh.
stereotypical.
I
Oh
cannot
God,
wait, girl. You got me over here like,
it's
ooh, which
gonna be
Wednesday is
great.
this
This
gonna
is
be? I can't wait. Tatiana's gonna. Oh, Luna is gonna lead that show. She's gonna lead that episode. So I cannot wait for that. I cannot wait for that. Um, before we ramble on anymore, I'm gonna go ahead and end this. And I want to thank everyone for joining our live and replaying it, listening to it on Apple, Google, Spotify, however you may get our podcast. We thank you deeply, and please tune into us next Wednesday. And our description below will have our information linked. So thank you all for this journey.